Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the Cassette Phase. So I hope that you all had a good weekend. I just got back in town. I was in Savannah, Georgia for work last week, and I had a good time. It was a really cool place, but I'm definitely happy to be home. And before we dive into today's video topic, I did want to share just a couple quick little highlights from my trip. I don't think I had enough to make a full, interesting video on its own, but I do want to put in a little bit of footage here just because I did see some really cool things while I was there. So I knew that Savannah was old and historic, but I guess I didn't realize that it was like 1700s old. You know, we talk about the 80s a lot here. This place had stuff from the 1880s and even the 1780s. I did a lot of walking around and looking at historic buildings and monuments and things like that. Apparently a good portion of Savannah is supposedly haunted. You know, there were ghost tours available all over the place, and I didn't do any of those myself, but I could definitely see how that could be the type of city that would be perfect for an attraction like that. But of course, while I was there, I did find a couple of places that you all would probably find to be interesting. A vintage toy and video game store, and a really cool comic book shop. And I did pick up a couple of things, nothing major, because I knew I was going to have to fly home with that stuff. But as you'll see from the footage here, I brought home Super Techno Baseball on Genesis, a TMNT Adventures comic book, and then probably my favorite item from the whole trip, issue number 1 of the Captain Planet comic book series. And that's actually a good segue into today's video topic, which is going to involve cartoons, mostly from the 80s or maybe a little earlier, and a subject that I've been thinking about recently that I thought might make a really fun video. And I'm not even quite sure how to describe it, but I think you'll see what I mean once we get into it and start talking about it a little bit. Because there was this phenomenon back in the day where a lot of our favorite cartoon characters would have little sidekicks, little animals, either sidekicks or like a side character that was always like either a little animal or like a little creature. And I think they were meant to be like comic relief in a way, or give the younger members of the audience someone to latch onto. And some of these characters were really cool, and others not so much. But I want to talk about them. And of course, I want to talk about our cassette of the day. Because hey, it's Monday. Why not, right? Sound like fun to you? Come hang out. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Ottoman, and welcome back to another great day here in the den. Today's background noise of choice is some Punky Brewster on the CRT. Love that old show. And before we get into today's video, we have to do our cassette of the day. And I pulled down a clamshell VHS tape, because we hadn't done one of those in a little while, I don't think, for a movie that was based on one of my all-time favorite cartoons. And that is none other than DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. Now, my memories of this come from summertime, and I did a little bit of research on this before today's video just to confirm that my memories weren't crossed up, as they can sometimes be. And yeah, this came out in August, first week of August, 1990. And so let's see, I would have been 9 years old. I've mentioned before, I was a latchkey kid, so I was probably home alone, maybe with my brother, looking for stuff to do. August, that's the dog days of summer. If we ever got tired of playing outside, maybe it was around this time, and we were leaning more heavily into watching movies and playing Nintendo and all of those types of things. But I remember my friend calling me up on the phone and saying, "Hey, my mom's going to take us to a movie. Do you want to go? We're going to go up to the Super Saver Cinema in Oklahoma City, and we're going to see a movie." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I could probably do that." I had some allowance. I had my $2 a week allowance, and saved up a couple of bucks so I could go do that if I wanted to. I said, "What movie are we seeing?" And he's like, "Well, we need to decide. We could either do Young Guns 2 or DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp." And I don't think that I had seen Young Guns 1 at the time. I remember telling my friend, I don't think I've seen Young Guns, so maybe I shouldn't see the sequel just yet. Maybe we should go see DuckTales. And that's ultimately what we ended up doing. And when I looked it up, I did double check that those timelines worked, because that Young Guns 2 came out August 1st, 1990, and this movie came out August 3rd. So that would have worked out. It's amazing what you remember around things like this sometimes. But this was apparently the first Disney cartoon animated movie that wasn't done by Walt Disney Animation Studios. This was the first one done under the Movie Tunes studio. So, and I like this movie. I remember the animation at the time looking a little bit better. Like, you could tell they went up a notch. And the DuckTales TV show already had really good animation and really good music, and they just kind of upped things a little bit, with the budget and the time that they had to make this, and ended up being a pretty cool movie. And it's still one that I'll pop in from time to time, from that good old summer of 1990. So I saw that on the shelf today. I know we're talking about cartoons here in a minute, and so I thought this would be a good choice for today's cassette of the day. So for today's video, I'm really sticking to little creature type sidekicks or side characters, and not so much pets, because I could probably do, and probably will do, an entirely separate video just talking about the dogs and the cats and the various pets that some of our favorite cartoon characters had back in the day. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And the first little creature that I want to mention today is Snarf from the Thundercats. Now, like him or don't, Snarf here is pretty much responsible for the idea of this video. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know yet, but I was reading this comic book right here, which by the way was awesome. I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now, but for a comic book from 1985, the colors and the print and everything just still looked really, really good. And the artwork was just incredible all throughout this thing. I'm just amazed at the amount of work and detail that they put into a comic book like this back in the day. But Snarf was kind of the central character here because Mum-Ra had captured, well, Mum-Ra's henchmen, you know, Jackal Man and Slithe and all those guys. They had captured the Thundercats and, you know, entombed them, I guess. And Snarf had to save the day. And so I was thinking, wow, it's just kind of a little side character that I always thought was just kind of a little bit annoying at times. You know, saves the day in this particular story. And I really enjoyed reading that. So that kind of sparked the idea for this video, like I said. So let's see. A few little facts on Snarf. He was able to contribute to the team, I guess, by communicating with other animals on Third Earth. He was voiced by Bob McFadden, who also did about a dozen other voices on the show, including Slithe, like I mentioned, and Groon the Destroyer. He also did voices on other shows, like he was Commander Stargazer and also Steel Will on the Silverhawks show. Yeah, so I figured Snarf was a good example. This little guy, he is a, I guess he was meant to go on your straw. This was a 1986 Burger King toy. I always thought he was kind of cool. I don't remember ever putting him on my actual straw, but you know, just kind of treating him like a little PVC action figure. So, so there we go, little sidekick creature or whatever you want to call it. Number one, Snarf. Now, the next little sidekick creature that I want to talk about, you knew he had to be here. None other than Slimer. Now, this is an interesting one. And one of the most 80s characters ever, right? A green slime ghost. I mean, come on. Now, as we know, Slimer kind of started out as like a low-level bad guy, you know, antagonist in the original movie. And then eventually, he became a friend and a kind of a sidekick in a way to the Ghostbusters in that cartoon series. And of course, we can't forget, he was featured on the High C Ecto Cooler juice boxes. I know they bring that back every few years, but it's been a while. Come on, High C. This summer would be a great time for some Ecto Cooler. Or if you want to wait till Halloween, I'm fine with that too. But in the cartoon, Slimer was voiced by the great Frank Welker, one of the most famous and prolific cartoon voice actors ever, who gave us voices of Ray Stantz in the real Ghostbusters cartoon. He was Baby Kermit in the Muppet Babies. He played Megatron. He was Scooter in the GoBots, which is another character that I actually considered for this list. I didn't know if he would have counted, but I thought about including old Scooter from GoBots. Let's see, Frank Welker, he was Copperhead and Flash, and some others in G.I. Joe. And then he played some of the Beagle Boys in DuckTales. So just what a career Frank Welker had, especially in the 80s. Let's keep moving. Okay, next up, another character that you knew had to be here on this list. We had to include him, Orco. You know, let's visit Eternia, and our friends with the Masters of the Universe franchise, who, as you'll see in a minute, they're going to be well represented here. So Orco, a magician from a parallel world of Trolla. So his magical abilities vary based on his location. And as you probably remember from the cartoon, his magic didn't always work well. In fact, it hardly ever worked well on Eternia, which, of course, led to all kinds of antics and shenanigans on the cartoon. And he was only in the cartoon, and then, of course, the action figure. Apparently, they wanted to use him in the live-action Masters of the Universe movie, but his design was just a little bit too complex for the time to pull that off effectively. Now, I actually went trick-or-treating in an Orco costume when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I think I have a picture of that here, at least of the costume. And this is one of those classic 80s Halloween costumes where they give you a plastic mask that usually resembles the character, but just in case people didn't know who you were, they gave you like this little plastic or vinyl, I don't know, smock that you would wear that literally just had the character's picture, printed on it. So there was no question about who you were going as for Halloween. I love that. But let's see, Orco, voiced by Lou Scheimer, who was one of the original founders of Filmation. And he was also the voice of King Randor, Stratos, Manny Faces, Moss Man, and several others. Now his daughter Erica Scheimer played some of the characters in She-Ra, including Frosta and Queen Angela, and she also sang the ending credits song "I Have the Power," which is one of my favorite theme songs from the 80s. And this is a perfect segue into our next little creature sidekick. And of course, we're talking about Lookie from She-Ra, Princess of Power. Now, this was a very minor character who didn't have any dialogue at all in the actual show, from what I remember. But he would show up at the end, the very end of the episode, and say, "Hey, did you see me anywhere? I was hiding somewhere in the episode. Were you able to find me?" And I always thought that was kind of a cool little gimmick. As an 80s kid, something that you could look forward to, kind of like a little interactive element of that She-Ra cartoon. And I've mentioned this, I think, a couple of times before, but I think I actually preferred that cartoon to He-Man. I mean, I liked them both, and they were obviously very similar, but I liked I liked the Evil Horde. I liked Hordak and Mantenna and some of those guys. I don't know. For some reason, I liked that She-Ra cartoon maybe a little bit better. Maybe it has to do with the interactive element with Lookie here, and like I mentioned before, that great theme song at the end of the show, the end credits, sung by Erica Scheimer, who also played the voice of Lookie. So we're sticking with the Masters of the Universe, I guess, for one more here, because like I said, this phenomenon was very common in He-Man and She-Ra for whatever reason. And that's not even talking about Cringer, Battle Cat, Swiftwind, or any of those. But here we have Cowl, which I guess was meant to be a cross between a koala and an owl. And apparently, Cowl was one of only 4 Etherians who knew that She-Ra and Adora were the same person. Can you name the other 3? I think it calls them out pretty explicitly in the theme song. But it's Light Hope is one, Madame Raz is one, Lookie, who we've already talked about, and then Cowl here. And this was another character who was voiced by Lou Scheimer, and I think that just about covers it for now for the Masters of the Universe examples. So let's keep going. Now, I'm not sure if these next ones really count, but I'm going to lump them together because they're both from one of the earliest cartoons that I loved as a kid, and that's Danger Mouse. So here we have my favorite character from the show, actually, the bumbling, cowardly sidekick Penfold, who I thought was just a really cool character. He had a great little comedic dynamic between himself and Danger Mouse that I just really enjoyed as a kid. He was voiced by Terry Scott, and I thought that he was a mole, but apparently he's a hamster. So yeah, great character. And then we have one over here that is probably even more fitting for today's video. And you've got Baron Silas Greenback is the frog there, the villain. His little creature sidekick named Nero, which is apparently a fuzzy caterpillar who doesn't do a whole lot, but is kind of always there. Reminds me a little bit of Dr. Claw's Mad Cat and Inspector Gadget. So I showed you earlier that I've got the Punky Brewster sitcom going here in the den today. Well, for this next one, we've got the animated version of Punky Brewster and her cuddly little pal, Glomer. Who remembers Glomer? Again, voiced by the great Frank Welker. He was considered kind of a leprechaun gopher, if that makes sense, who gets left behind when his city at the end of the rainbow disappears, leaving him to join the human world. Now, I can remember this one feeling a little bizarre, even as a kid. And I thought for sure they were just doing this to sell toys. You know, it was just kind of like an Ewok thing. But I never actually saw any Glomer plushies or figures. You know, they probably made some, but I never encountered them. So who knows? But he made a good pal for Punky and Brandon and the gang as they went through all of their Saturday morning adventures. So I definitely had to include him here. So we're winding down here, but I had a few more that I just wanted to quickly mention. Starting first with Uni from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. Now this cartoon is one that I was just kind of okay with as a kid, but I really enjoy it now as an adult. Like, it's a really fun background cartoon, and even kind of holds up if you want to actually sit down and watch an episode. It's really not bad. I mean, it's not the best, but you can watch it. You know, you can get through it. And surprise, we have another animal character here being voiced by Frank Welker. Who else? Which makes sense now because a lot of these characters that I mentioned today, they all sound really similar when you go back and listen to them. And Uni was Bobby's pet unicorn, who was able to teleport, but only once per day. It's just fun stuff. These are all on YouTube. If you haven't seen the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon in a while, go back and give that a shot. And to wrap it up, for today at least, I've got just a few more here, I guess 3 honorable mentions, you could call it, that I just wanted to at least touch on briefly. So we've got T-Bob from the Mask cartoon. He counts, right? Voiced by Graham McKenna. And then we've got Twink from Rainbow Bright's little sprite friend, right? Voiced by Robbie Lee, who also did voices on Q*bert, Get Along Gang, and Pound Puppies. And then last but not least, or maybe least, we've got Gleep and Gloop from the Herculoids, which I know is not an 80s show, but I watched the heck out of it in the 80s on USA Cartoon Express. So I always kind of lump it in with all of my 80s cartoons that I loved to watch back then. So these creatures, protoplasmic creatures, I'm sorry, were voiced by Don Messick, who did some great work as Astro in the Jetsons, Muttley in Wacky Races, and both Boo Boo and Ranger Smith in Yogi Bear. So that's it for today. That's quite the bunch of sidekick creatures. I know I missed some, but I had a good time taking you through some of these examples today. And there we are. So I know that today's video was a little bit specific, but that's just how it goes sometimes when you're sharing memories of the 80s. And I also know that I didn't mention every example of the little creature sidekick from cartoons back then, so let me know in the comments which ones I missed. Or let me know which ones were your favorites when you were a kid. Either way, I hope that you enjoyed our little trip back in time today, and if you did, consider subscribing. Also, don't forget to like the video, but only if you actually liked the video. But for now, and as always, relax. Enjoy life and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.